So I want to welcome all of you this morning. I am Dr. Keima Sheriff, or Dr. Kem, or Kem, however you prefer is fine with me. And I'm a leader of New Life United Methodist Church in Drexel Hill. For my church, I serve as a worship leader, the New Life UMC lay representative member of the South District Committee on Ordained Ministry, a member of several ministries, including SPPRC, Finance, Evangelism, and Love Renegades, which is our social justice ministry. Professionally, I am the Assistant Dean of Student Programs at Montgomery County Community College, and I have two consulting practices, the Institute for Balance and Restoration and Dr. Kem Speaks. As an assistant dean, I provide senior leadership over student engagement programs, such as the student support programs, the athletics department, student life, and the Children's Center. In my consulting work with the Institute for Balance and Restoration, I work with organizations to support them in providing leadership development, conflict resolution, and program development. Through Dr. Kem Speaks, I work with individuals who are experiencing what I call stuckness in their pursuit of goal completion and need support getting over the barrier to completion. I give you this brief bio of my professional roles to demonstrate for you that I have over 25 years of experience as a leader working with new, developing, and longtime leaders. So I know a little bit about a little bit, and I hope to share that with you today. So I want to take a quick poll of all of our participants. I'd like for you in the chat to share with the group, if you could just type in the group, what leadership roles you represent, either in your church or professionally. What leadership roles do you represent? So if you can just take a minute and in the chat, that would be great. Now, Frank, I know you're on the call, so I'll just ask you, once we get all of the responses in, I'll just ask you to actually just tell us, since you won't be able to type that in, I assume, unless you somehow can figure out how to type it into the chat.
I'll respond at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just give you guys a couple minutes to do that. Okay, so it's coming in. All right. Digital ministries, lay leader, lay delegate. Yeah. Team photographers, so that said AV support that we all desperately need right now. Finishing up certified lay ministry credentialing, awesome. Data service specialist, great. SPRC chair, yeah. Yay, Master of Science in Leadership. That's awesome. Yep, coordinator of certified lay ministry program, minister program, pastor, yes. Coordinator of Black Methodist for Church Renewal. So we have a lot of varying types of leadership among us. Frank, what's your leadership role?
Well, like probably most of this group, if not all, I wear a multiplicity of hats.
Yeah.
I'm a secretary on the Board of Trustees, member of Church Council, member of the Finance Committee, follow the money. I lead our adult Bible study, our Sunday school class for adults. And probably most importantly, I'm sign man. I change our exterior church signage.
We need the sign man. We need the sign man.
To promote upcoming events and scripture and to be a presence in the community for our church.
Awesome. Yeah, I see we have here people who are all wearing multiple hats. I mean, professional career hats, and whether it's in
I have an MBA in finance, recently retired, so I have
MBA
a
in
little bit more
finance.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so people are working in social service and organizational leadership and in the church, outside of the church. It is awesome, the level of leadership that we have represented here. So I hope then this conversation will make sense to you today about why I believe that leadership is an iterative process, right? It's a process that has to repeat itself over and over again in order to remain fresh and relevant and to be able to renew our spirit. So let me offer a definition of leadership. Let's look at how some various business leaders define leadership. Warren Bennis was a scholar, author, and organizational consultant. He has since passed away. He defined leadership as the capacity to translate vision into reality. Bill Gates, we all know as the business magnate, software developer, author, and philanthropist, believes that as we look to the next century, leaders will be those who empower others, right? So we had someone who had the capacity to translate the vision, and we have someone who's saying it's the ability to empower others. And then we have author, speaker, and pastor John Maxwell, who defines leadership as influence, nothing more, nothing less, right? I particularly like Kevin Krause's organizational consultant and author definition of leadership. He says that leadership is the process of social influence, which maximizes the efforts of others towards the achievement of a goal. So let's notice some key elements in the definition. Leadership stems from social influence, not necessarily authority or power. A lot of times we want to attribute the title of leadership to someone who has a title of authority, right? And it doesn't always work that way, right? Sometimes the people who God creates as leaders, many of us know, are people who don't really have a position of official position of authority or power, yet when they speak, they are able to influence and motivate others to act towards a goal. Leadership requires others. It implies that they don't need to be direct reports, right? They don't have to be reporting to you directly, but it needs others who are in a position of wanting to be led or be in this type of relationship with you. There is no mention of a personality trait, attribute, or even a title. There may be many styles, many paths to effective leadership. There's not one particular way to be a leader. In fact, when you look up leadership styles, you'll see that there are many, right? They're transformational leaders, servant leaders. There are leaders who are charismatic leaders. So there's all kinds of leadership styles. But the one thing that really resonates with me from Stephen's definition is that it includes a goal, not influence with no intended outcome. If we were just sitting in a position of leadership, just to say we were leaders, then what are we doing? So I'm just going to be queen of all things in my bedroom? Like there has to be some goal or something that I'm working towards, and I've encouraged or empowered, garnered the support of others to help me achieve that goal. So what does the Bible say about leadership? I mean, that's what brought us here today, right? Tools for Ministry. God actually has a lot to say about how we should operate and stand in our leadership. Through a series of scriptures, God speaks to leadership as our persistence in doing the work, even and especially in the face of trials, that we are to model for and glean from the good ways and lessons of previous leaders while also standing as a model for others. He cautions us to humble ourselves before him in our leadership. Be really careful about why you're doing the work. It is not unto us, it is unto him. And to remember that teachers or leaders will be judged more strictly than others. So figure out whether or not you really want to do this, because it may come with some glory, but there will also be some trials around that judgment and criticism. He created us and set us apart for our leadership. Long before we even knew what we were going to step into, he created that in us. So we may not have had the title, but he created it in us, that destiny or that path that we would follow because of the gifts that he has given us. And holding fast to our faith and trust that God is providing all that we need for our leadership and good work, and to commit our activities to the Lord so that our plans will be achieved. So it, again, just reminding us of the purpose of why, the reason why we are doing the work that we're doing. So I'm just going to drop into the chat some of the scriptures that are supporting what I just provided for you as some of just what God says about leadership. You can comb through the Bible and see that there are many, many, many more messages that he gives. But these are just some if you wanted to take a quick look. So why is leadership an iterative process, right? Why is it a process that repeats itself over and over again? Being a leader is rewarding and challenging. It bears an existence that is duality, right? It is that love, and sometimes, let's be honest, we hate every minute of it because it is not always bringing us great joy, but it is bringing us immense conflict. I know that the thoughts about all of the what ifs, how can I's, and what abouts are many, but I also know this: the thoughts will always be many. I want to share with you the opening paragraph of my dissertation that I defended a few years ago. A Black woman, first generation doctoral student, single parent of a young son, student loan debt twice my total mortgage and rising, crisis of confidence, 2-year writing paralysis, health challenges, launching a new consulting practice with several clients, the recession. Leaner budgets meant losing all but 2 clients, transition from 1 full-time consulting to full-time employment in higher education. Imposter syndrome, a marriage, a divorce, a personal financial crisis, 11 years pursuing my doctorate, 2 different doctoral programs, deep levels of fatigue, yet hope persists. One could ask, and one could really want to find out, how could hope persist when faced with all of that? So I want to ask a couple of you now who would be willing to share. When have you found in your particular leadership, in your pursuit, that you have experienced what I call, as I just listed out for you, the Jacob moments, the moments when you just want to throw up your hands and say, y'all go ahead and take your whole bag, take your whole leadership bag and do something else with it, but I don't want it anymore. I'm not going to be a doctoral Kim. Okay, I'm just not going to be Dr. Kim. How many of you have experienced those moments and would like to share what that moment of stuckness felt like for you? Anyone can share.
I can definitely relate to what you're saying. I'm actually kind of experiencing that right now, because I just in September I took on a different type of supervisory assignment as a training supervisor. And I recently, I had my first termination because I'm into my 17th year, my 25th total year, but on my 17th year as, in supervisory capacity. And this was the first time that I had to terminate or recommend termination from someone who didn't pass training. And it was just such a weird feeling. I had never recommended termination before because my previous assignment, I had journey people who had been there for a while. So this has been a stressful week for me because it was a new adventure, but I realized that it had to happen. But at the same time, I didn't feel good about it, but I knew that it had to be. And I was just so ready to just call the retirement board and say, listen, give me my pension check now. I've had it with this.
Yeah.
I'm too old for this,
Yeah.
get somebody else younger in this capacity.
Yeah.
But, I'm stretching myself at the same time. So like you said, it doesn't feel good at times, but, it's a part of the job.
Yeah. It's really difficult when you have to get to the point where you have to dismiss someone because you feel the weight of that person's life right in your hands, and sometimes it's hard to compartmentalize the role of you as the leader, the authority, the person who has to have the organization's best interest at that moment, right, in mind, and the fact that this is another human being who has responsibilities and bills, and maybe they weren't living up to the standard of their job, but that doesn't change how you feel human to human, right? So I can really relate to the power of the depth of pain that can bring. Yeah. Who else would like to share a stuckness or a pain point in that leadership process where you just want to throw the whole bag away?
For us is when, so we just moved in the pandemic, and it has been the hardest transition because there was no ending and no clear beginning, and I still don't know half of the congregation, or probably more than that. And I'm very community oriented, and it has been almost impossible to get through things because no one's meeting on site. But the matter that complicates it is that we have a 32-year-old autistic son who decided to want to be on his own last year. And it has been a disaster. So all these things, plus I am doing my DMin and trying to come up with some kind of proposal so I can get my degree finished, and it's just been impossible because it's community leadership, and how I can do community leadership in the community, I don't know yet. So it's been interesting.
Yeah.
An exercise in grace.
Yeah, listen, a true exercise in grace, because the weight of your personal life and the things that you're trying to, manage in your personal life, and then all of the other responsibilities, they all seem to have like competing and actually sometimes very polar, expectations of how you're supposed to show up, because one thinks that you need to be here and it demands that you be here, and all the other things have to go by the wayside, and the other things feel maybe sometimes the other way, right? And so it's like, but I'm just one person, and at some point you're like, I don't think I have the emotional or the mental bandwidth to really be stretched in all of these ways, right?
It's more like snapping.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what you feel like, you're being stretched and pulled in all of these ways. Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. How about one more?
I'll share.
Okay.
I feel like where my life is right now is I have a story in the back of my head that I should be retired by now. I should not have to do anything. And I have my own hats that I wear that are demanding. And my husband just became a pastor of a church, which is very exciting. And I keep getting pulled into that and excited about supporting that and all of that. But the same kind of a thing, I think, keeps occurring to me, like, how am I going to do all of this?
Yeah.
And I'm getting older by the minute.
Yeah.
So it's, how's this really going to work?
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of redefining, I guess, who I am.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting when we have a particular plan, right? You're like, okay, I'm going to put in my time. Okay, I'm putting in all this time, because by the time I get to this time, that's my time. And then you realize, so this time is not my time, huh? So you own this time too? Okay. So when is it going to be my time? Because I'm telling you, I'm fitting to be tired of all of y'all taking over my time. Yeah, it's definitely challenging when we have these plans and these ideas about how we would like it to go, and the timeline just doesn't go the way that we hope. And so that's an interesting point, Jennifer, and I thank you for sharing that, because that takes us to how I created this process, this iterative process called the 5 Ps. Despite what you're doing in this life, you will find roadblocks, barriers, challenges, and questions about how to overcome them. I have found that the best way to address and overcome these are found in something I call the 5 Ps. I developed this result as a result of my doctoral journey and the research of my dissertation, because I did a study in understanding how Black Christian women were using their faith as a persistent strategy to complete their doctoral programs. The women were faced with unbelievable life challenges, including the death of loved ones, financial ruin, the demands of being full-time employees, parenting, either coupled or solo, and immense self-doubt. Yet they all maintained the hope and trust in God that if He blessed them with the opportunity to be in their doctoral program, then He would get them through, no matter what. These women demonstrated the heart, mindset, and temperament of leaders. Let's dig into a little bit about what that actually looks like. And so from their stories and from the word and what the word describes as what is expected of a leader, I've created what I call the 5 Ps of completion and leadership. Okay, the first P, that's your purpose. What is the vision? Write it and make it plain, right? That's what Habakkuk 2:2 tells us. But it really is about being clear about what you want and why. I argue that we write the vision in pen because it's a little harder to erase the pen. So when we have those moments when we just want to walk away, we just want to throw it up, the pen, that writing is in front of us about the purpose. And we all know that as children of God who have accepted Christ and we are doing the work of God, that our purpose really is to bring glory to God. And so we have chosen in our various lives, whether it's through our religious lives, our spiritual lives, our church life, or our professional lives, to show up and show God up when we are in those spaces, right? And so what is the particular thing that you want to work on as a part of this purpose? Maybe it's starting a new ministry. Maybe it's reviving a former ministry. Maybe it's bringing a new process online. Maybe it's having the church go through a retreat process because there's some pulling away from the mission and the work. Whatever it is, when you decide that that is the purpose, that is the goal that you want to pursue, and you clearly define it and you understand the vision of that work, you will be better able to motivate yourself and those who you are empowering as your followers, as your committee members, to be able to buy into that vision. When I think about the work that we do with Love Renegades, our social justice ministry at New Life, it is a work that talks about having difficult and loving conversations, radical loving conversations with people around justice issues. That resonates with me, right? So when that mission was identified, it resonated with me. You will draw people to you who are clearly wanting to be in that space because it resonates with them. But it's important to be clear about what the mission and the vision is, because nothing frustrates people more than being in something and they don't have a clear path that they're going to follow or a clear understanding of why they're doing this work. That is very frustrating to people to feel like they're spinning their wheels, but they have no idea why, because they're so gifted and they want to be able to use their gifts effectively and feel like they're providing some meaningful contribution to the group. The second P is planning. What are the steps that you need to take to make the vision a reality? I encourage you to write this one in pencil because this is the frustrating one. You know how it says, the word talks about how we make plans and really it's God that's the one that's going to determine what happens because he orders the steps. That's the planning part. We go about and if you're like me, you have these wonderful lists and you got a little check box next to it, and you just check off your little thing. You just feel so good about yourself. In fact, I go so far as to put little hearts and flowers and decorate. You know, like I have a debt repayment plan. I have rainbows and hearts and flowers and beach scenes and all kinds of cute little things to inspire me so that I can continue to move forward with my debt repayment plan and be done in 7 years and 7 months, because that motivates me. But here's the thing. What happens if for 5 months or 12 months, a pandemic hits and my little debt repayment plan has to be put to the side because maybe my employer said we have to reduce your hours? Now, am I going to give up on the dream of being debt free, or am I going to become flexible and figure out how to re-strategize, how to replan so that I can still achieve the goal? I don't believe God wants me to be in debt. In fact, the word said he doesn't want us to be in debt, right? So I don't think God is saying that I will not be able to get out of debt. I think he's saying that right now for a time such as this, because, you know, Ecclesiastes tells us there's a time for everything. A time such as this, we need you to plan a little differently. And if you're willing to listen to me, Kim, if you're willing to go with me and trust me, I might have you out of this little debt repayment plan 3 years faster. But you got to trust that if you allow your plans to be flexible so that I'm guiding you, you can get this done. And so, you know, Jennifer, it makes me think about my doctoral pursuit. It was painful that I was in this program for 11 years because so much came into my mind. I'm like, did you just become dumb? Did you just become really dumb? Like, why are you still in this program, right? Everybody else here, 5 years, 6 years. I mean, they just cap and gowning it all over the place. And you still here talking about, oh Lord, this dissertation is killing me, this research sequence. Right. But I didn't realize that in all of what was happening in my pain in getting through the program, God was creating something in me so that I could be able to support others who are going through their program, because maybe there are people who weren't able to persist, who just gave up. And I can come back to them and say, hey, we've got a way now to help you persist. I can authentically speak to that pain point. Right. And so sometimes it's just realizing that our plans, as we're creating them, that it's not so much that the plan was flawed, but that we get to be flexible in the creation of what it is that we'd like to see and when we think we'd like to see it happen, right? So that brings us to the third P, right? Because we've thought about that vision and we have clearly articulated it. And then we get to that second P of the planning. We're writing all of the steps that we think we need to take to move ourselves and our group towards achieving that purpose. And sometimes we need to be flexible in that. But then there's the third P, and that's perspective, right? There's something called growth versus fixed mindset that Carol Dweck created, this idea around understanding that as you are moving towards your goals, you will make mistakes and have setbacks, and the way you integrate that into your thinking, into your perspective, into your mindset will either help you to complete your goal or it will stop you from completing your goal. Remember, one of the questions that I asked myself was, are you dumb? Like I literally said that, Kim, did you become dumb? Because up until now, master's everything, you were good. Now doctorate, you just like, you can't write. What happened? That mindset could have derailed me, right? Well, for a little bit, it did. I had a 2-year writing paralysis. I had lost confidence, academic confidence. I thought I could not write. And so I had to do a lot of work to regain my confidence to do that. But the argument is recognizing that you will make mistakes along the way. You're human. That's okay that you made those mistakes. What is the opportunity to learn from that mistake? What is the growth point you can take to learn from that mistake? So that rather than saying, I only have a limited set of abilities and capacity to do a certain thing, you say, I have the ability and capacity to do what I'm gifted to do. And if there's an expertise that I need, I can outsource it, right? I can get people on my team who have a particular skill set so that they can balance out the team. I don't need to be all things to all people, whether you're a pastor or lay leader, servant minister, whatever it is. You are not all things to all people. So the wisdom of a leader says, let me surround myself on my team to carry out this vision, to make this happen with all of the expertise that we will need to make this happen. And if I make mistakes or if I don't understand something, it's not a limitation in me, it's an opportunity for me to expand by creating a larger network. So all about your mindset. If you believe that you cannot do it, you are absolutely correct. If you believe that you can do it, you are absolutely correct. You determine that. And that is why God tells us to think with his mind and not our own, right? That growth mindset is steeped in having the renewing of our mind in God. So now that leads us to the fourth P, persistence. Oh, Lord. You will get tired. You will want to walk away. You'll be frustrated because you have to make sacrifices. But if you persist to achieve the purpose, the vision, your why, you will be successful, because God told us that if we persevere, we will reap great benefits. We've seen story after story in the Bible about those who have persevered, those who have faced the danger, in the face of the danger, and said, I will just trust God. I will believe in God, and persisted. And because of that persistence, they were blessed. Now, it is also true that there are some leaders who didn't see the promised land, right? Whatever the promised land was, but they were able to get others to be able to see whatever the promised land is. Remember, that's the part about being flexible. We create the vision. Sometimes just because we create these visions that we write down and for our groups, it doesn't necessarily mean we walk into that vision. Sometimes it means we've created that path for others. I remember writing out years ago, I was like, I want to be able to do a scholarship-based work for students who are underrepresented, marginalized, and be able to go to major industry like Facebook and the Gates Foundation and have them support this work. And I can go to students all across the country and help them to persist and create an effective and authentic pipeline, right? Something that would really create diversity in the hiring pipelines for all of these organizations. So I wrote this thing out. A couple days ago, a girlfriend of mine told me about a job opportunity that she was just given, and my mouth dropped open. I was like, I literally wrote this out years ago. So I pulled it out and I explained it to her, and I was like, I wrote this vision for you. The whole time I thought I was doing it for myself, but really I wrote it for her so that she could be able to take this work and do a great thing with it. So sometimes when God gives us these opportunities to see a vision, it's not, we want to be careful that we don't wed ourselves so much to it that we're inflexible to see that it could be that we're creating this vision, this opportunity for others, but that we persist in it. We continue to do the work in it. And then that brings us to the final P. And that P I call peace. This is the P where you really get to figure out what is going to be your grounding practice in God. For me, for the years that I was going through the doctoral journey, it was really getting up every morning and setting aside time to do my morning devotions. It was asking God specific questions in writing, right? Because it wasn't, it's one thing to say your prayers out. It's another to write your prayers in a journal form. So I had begun writing my prayers in a journal form. And so I would talk to God, and I realized along the way, the questions that I was asking him, he was answering for me, because I would reread my entries, right? And I would reread the things that I wrote about the blessings that happened and the challenges I was faced with. So I saw how he was getting me out of maneuvering things. I saw the people he brought into place to support me and the positions that he placed me in. I also saw how sometimes when I thought things were just a pain point, that really it was a stretching opportunity because the blessing was right on the other side of that. But because I was so caught up, I didn't realize that that's what was happening. So for me, it was helpful to journal out my morning devotions. I think, was it you, Blaine, that said you went out for a walk? right before the session. Yep. Doing the physical activities, being in a space where, especially in nature, it has a way of helping us to reconnect to the ground. We come from the ground. We are of this earth. And having an opportunity to reconnect to that when all of the chaos is up here is a good way of centering us. So you figure out what works for you. Being near the ocean works for me. Anytime I can get near the ocean, I just need to see the water. I just need to hear the waves. And it feels like just things just melt away, right? So for others, it might be doing body work. We hold the tension in ourselves. We hold our work as leaders, our frustrations in our body. And so having a way to work that out, having someone to do massage or whatever that body work is, if you have chronic back pain, chronic shoulder pain, neck pain, whatever it is, it might be going to physical therapy. Whatever it is that you need to do physically, work that stress out so that you can be aligned, right? So you can have that alignment with God. Perhaps it is doing a physical workout, right? Including actual exercise into your routine. Maybe it's counseling, right? Because sometimes it gets so difficult that we need to work it out and talk it out, right? And I think God created therapists for this very reason, right? Because sometimes we do need to, whether it's pastoral counseling or it's talk therapy, whatever you feel comfortable with, but it's reaching out to someone who you think understands your foundation, your perspective, and can provide you with that level of support, right? So let's talk now about, those are the 5 P's, right? So the first P is the purpose. The second P is your plan. Your third P is your perspective. Your fourth is your persistence. And your fifth is your peace. Let's talk now about what maybe resonated with you from the 5 Ps. Maybe there's something that you're like, oh yes, I need to do way more of that, or I didn't even think about that, or that's exactly where I need to be in my life right now. And yes, Alicia, getting a massage is a spiritual practice. I fully agree. I fully agree. So who would like to share?
Question for you, really. I mean, I like the way you laid that out there, but then when you got to number 5 with peace, it seems to me, at least in my own experience, that peace bit, you might arrive at that after those other 4, but if you're not working on it the whole time through, you got an issue. I could tell you my own Jacob story, and from my perspective, it feels more like Job. Probably not, but working on the peace part was important to help me to accomplish, to see the purpose, the planning, the perspective, the persistence. So, the others kind of felt like a 1, 2, 3, 4 step, 1, 2, 3, 4. That one to me feels like a continual underlying piece. I was just wondering what you,
so Blaine, you're one of those students. You're just one of those students, Blaine.
I'm usually an oddball.
So no, I'm teasing. You're absolutely correct. So there's another set of work that I do that with the 5 Ps. It's actually, there are 2 more Ps. There are actually 7. There's another set of work that I do, right? And peace is actually it is the center of all of the Ps, and it happens at every part of the P, right? So remember, when you do the vision work, when you do that purpose work, you've got to be actually doing it with God. So that's part of where the peace comes out of, right? When you're doing the persistence work, when you're doing the planning work, when you're doing any of the other 2 Ps that come up, that prayer, that peace has to be a part of all of the work. And that is what makes this the iterative process, right? Because it is in doing the work with God that you realize where you need to be flexible, where you need his strength, where you need encouragement, where you need to build your resources, where you need to go out and outsource things. It is in doing that work. So, yep.
So that leads to the other question I had, but that leads to two more really.
Of course it
I want
does.
to take, either I didn't hear it or I'm too dumb. What do you mean by the iterative process? You've said that several times, and
So
it's not a term
iterative
that I'm
means,
familiar with.
yeah, so iterative means repetitive, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so it is, so leadership, what I had said earlier was that leadership is iterative or it is repetitive. You are
Okay,
constantly
that's what I thought.
repeating, yep, you are constantly repeating the cycle.
All right.
Because
And then-
of this nature of being, of allowing God to create for you what the true plan is, what the true work is.
And then if I can beg you one more and I'll shut up.
No worries.
The OCD me says, what are 6 and 7? Even if you don't describe them.
So you really want me to give up all my goods, huh? Okay, so
that's up to you. You're the boss.
No, I'm gonna share, right? So the 7 P's, the second part of the P really is around understanding that it's called a P of problem. And no matter what you do, you have to recognize that even with doing all of this, you will encounter the problems, right? And so each time you're doing this, there will be a new problem that will present itself. And sometimes certain problems require certain things, certain responses, and other problems, other responses. But in order for you to deal with that problem that may come, even if you have clearly identified your vision and your plan, and you're persistent in your mindset, and you're operating from a place of peace. Really, the last P that you need to do is the P that I call paradigm, right? You get to create a paradigm around goal completion and leadership. And this requires a lot more work, and it actually requires sometimes you creating an accountability system. So with the people that I work with, I'll often walk with them to help them create a paradigm around goal creation and completion and their leadership, so that they understand that we're constantly in motion. We're constantly in motion. You don't just write down your goal and walk away. You're constantly in motion with it. Yeah, I like blame.
Thank you.
No worries. Other thoughts? How did this resonate with you?
I have one.
Mm-hmm.
I find that flexibility is one of the key components to this whole process. Being a person who likes to control, God has taught me many times that
Yeah.
my plan isn't as good as his. And I just had an example to share. Worked with youth for many years and many mission trips. And I was working with a Christian international group and had 25 teenagers in Budapest, Hungary, with a bunch of non-Christian kids. And we were all in a bus, and the Hungarians were in the back, and the Americans were all in the front, and the bus broke down. That was going to mess up the entire plan for the day. It had people who were doing the planning in the wings all upset and running around. But I have to tell you, God had a plan, because and you couldn't do this here, but in Budapest, all the kids could jump out and they could all push the bus together. Well, that grounding moment, when they were laughing, they were having so much fun. By the time they got back on the bus, they were all integrated. And I couldn't have created something as good as that to bring those groups together. So yeah, we didn't get to see some of the things we were planning to see on our schedule, but it was a much better time for the rest of it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was one of those moments where you really couldn't script how you could, as a leader, motivate everybody towards a particular goal, right? That was a lived moment right there. But what it did for that group, for them to all feel like they were all purposefully and meaningfully contributing to the needs of that particular group, like every single person was needed in that moment. you couldn't buy that, right? But
couldn't.
it helped to to create cohesion in the
They,
group, I'm
they
sure.
thought they solved the problem. They
Yeah.
were so excited, and
Yeah.
they shared all that. It was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Let's see. Iterative often seems to have an aspect of incorporating lessons learned in the midst of the process, adapting on the fly. Yes, it does. I mean, it is a process of, it's repetitive in that there's feedback. So it's, I come from a background of systems thinking, right? So you get feedback about whatever you're doing, and then you take that feedback and you determine whether or not it makes sense to continue on the path that you're on or to adjust. And if you adjust, you're creating a new pathway. If you're continuing on the existing pathway because the feedback is supporting that your continuance on that pathway, then that's what you're doing. But you're still creating opportunities for that circle to continue, right? It's feedback and it's integration of implementation of feedback. And then you're doing it. And then you're like, okay, let me take another feedback check. And then you're, and so that's what it definitely makes it iterative. Any other thoughts?
Cam, can I just share something else? I'm so glad Brian asked that question, because what came to my mind was when you added problem to it. One of the things that I didn't add to what I was saying is my oldest son is in a serious medical challenge. And it's been long term. It's been almost during this whole pandemic thing that he had surgery done that was not successful and needs to be done again. And he now needs a liver transplant. And so it's, it's like, it's in the back of everything else that I'm doing, like trying to do my own life. It's like, shouldn't I constantly be focused on that?
Yeah.
And terrified, all the time, because I don't know when we'll get the phone call, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think everybody's struggling with those things too. You add these on top of the pandemic, you add these personal family issues that are going on, and diagnoses and all kinds of different things that come out as accidents, whatever. And that really kind of wants to derail you all the time. And I'm struggling with almost like a guilt complex of, no, I should be totally focused on him and not living my life at all. And so it's, but just what you said is true. And everybody said, I'm realizing it's making us much closer. It's making our family much closer. It's opening up communication much more. And just the strength that it takes to go through all that we've all been through with the pandemic and everything else. As much as this has all been really tough for everybody, I can't believe the strength that I see coming out of people, and the strong spiritual reaction on so many levels. And you're right, you can get derailed and just be like, oh, this is just too much. You can't take one more thing, But at the same time, you can't believe how you keep going on and growing as a result. You're not really destroyed. You just keep going and going. So
it's really interesting, like that idea about the mindset we choose to have about a thing, right? How sometimes when this might be your experience, I don't want to speak for you, but I know it has been my experience. When you're in a position where there's someone who has a great need, right? And there's also the possibility that person, there could be harm that could be realized out of that person's great need. There could be loss, there could be all kinds of things that comes from that particular person's experience. You automatically just become hyper aware, right? You're on alert all the time for that shoe to drop. And I recently had a moment where I said, I gotta stop. I gotta stop this, right? Because this happened in two ways. One, at work, because of the work that I do around students, I'm always the one getting the calls about students who are doing some suicidal ideation. They're contemplating ending their life or things like that. And so I would end my workday, but my emails would be coming to my phone, right? Or I would just be waiting, like constantly, any email that just checking. Weekends, checking, and responding to emails. And my supervisor said to me, Kim, why are you responding to emails on a Saturday, a Sunday, 2 a.m? Like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm just being available. I'm just making sure that if people need to reach me, they can reach me. I don't want anything to happen to anyone and they can't reach me. And she said, does our VP have your phone number? I said, yeah, everybody has my cell number. She said, okay. So do you think if they really need you, they won't just call you? I said, well, I mean, yeah. I mean, they'll call me. She said, well, then why are you making yourself a nervous wreck by always waiting to see if they're going to call you or if they're going to reach out? Put your snooze on your email so that when the work email comes in, it doesn't alert you that you have an email for work, and trust that if there's an emergency and they need you, they will call you so that you can tell your brain to just relax and not be on hyper alert mode. Well, Jennifer, I tried that thing that weekend. Girl, that snooze has stayed on my phone the rest of the, I've never removed it because I didn't realize what I was doing. That weekend that Monday after our conversation, I came back to work. I was like, Nicole, oh my God, I had an actual weekend. Like I disconnected from work. She was like, exactly. Just trust that if people need you, they will find you. But if they don't need you, you don't have to be ever ready. You don't have to be ever vigilant. You don't have to be hyper aware, hyper alert, because you never rest. Your brain doesn't rest. Your body doesn't rest. You can't just enjoy what you're in because you're always worried about what's going to come. The second time that this reality hit me was recently. My mom has some health issues, right? She's dealing with cognitive decline. So she was diagnosed with early onset dementia. Now, my mom was my superhero. I mean, she raised my siblings and we out of poverty and into, just the lives that we're able to live now. And so we are indebted to her. So to see my mom in any kind of weakened stage, not only is it upsetting to me, but it is scary. But I didn't actually articulate any of these things to her. I also come from an immigrant family. I come from a West African family, Liberian. So you don't talk about these things. You don't talk about your little feelings. Hold your feelings, get to work, right? So they don't do that part. Just you struggle through it. You stone woman, stone man it through it. So my sisters and I, who have been supporting my mom, we have talked about it. But we haven't talked about it with my mom. So this past weekend, we went to do like a girls' week, just a girls' weekend, an overnight thing, massages, all this kind of stuff. And now we were at Cheesecake Factory and we were having lunch on a Sunday. And I had been snapping at my mom, though. I didn't realize why I was snapping at her. I didn't even realize I was snapping at her until after the fact, but I was snapping, just snappy. And so, when we were in the middle of cheesecake at the end of the brunch, she was like, what is wrong with you? Everything I do is just wrong. What is wrong with you? And I'm like, everything you do is not wrong. I don't know what you're talking about. And my sisters were like, yo, you act like everything mom is doing right now is wrong. What is wrong with you? And then it just came out. I'm afraid. I don't know what's going to happen to you. And we haven't talked about it. And how do you feel? And my mom in her stoic self was like, well, we're not having this conversation. So then I feel crazy because I'm like, now I'm in the middle of Cheesecake Factory. The waiter is looking at me, server is looking at me like, what is wrong with this table? Everybody's crying. And so then my mother talks about how she feels, which makes me boo-hoo even more. And then I say, and I heard myself say it, I feel like I'm holding the brain for the family. Feel like I'm holding my brain for myself, my brain for my son, because he's 16 and they just don't have a good working situation, not until the good 30s. So, you got to hold the brain for the 16-year-old boy. And then I had to hold the brain for my mom is what I felt like, right? So I took on all of these responsibilities and feelings, but never articulated it, right? And it caused some resentment in me, not towards her, towards the illness, but because we had never talked about it, I was just holding it all in, and it was turning inward and becoming anger. And so it's really important when you are in a situation where you are providing for someone who is in a place where they need great care, and they are also, you know, maybe it's a terminal situation or it's one where they're really dependent, that you talk about it. You may or may not be able to talk about it with them, but you have to talk about it. Because if you don't, you can end up turning that inward, and that anger ends up becoming resentment towards the very person you care about. And you don't mean it as resentment towards them, but because you don't process it, it ends up becoming something that is very painful for you and for them. And so I say for you, Jennifer, those two things, you know, one, learning how to compartmentalize and to remove the situation that you're in, the experience that you're in, from one that you have to be always hyper alert and hyper aware, to you can be available, but you're available on these terms, right? Because this is the boundary you want to create for yourself. And then two, making sure that you're getting to talk it out, getting to work those things out in whatever fashion makes sense for you, whether it's with a friend or with a counselor or with your pastor, but in whatever ways that makes sense for you.
Well, the process that I did come to was actually accept, like literally experiencing he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I had to actually picture it happening instead of living on, you know, that's really what was behind it.
Yeah,
I
the
can't
fear.
tolerate losing a
Yeah.
child.
Yeah, the
To me, it's
fear.
like the
Yeah.
worst.
Yeah.
And so processing that, and just like from my faith standpoint, saying, you know, why do we hang on to this life so much? I mean, I know where he's going.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, that's a good thing in itself.
Right.
And I know.
Right.
And so it's like, why do we hang on like crazy people? You know, like as if that happened would be the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Yeah.
And yet you have to process all of those feelings. And it
Yep.
brought to mind when my mother was on the verge of leaving, and was we were raised Baptist, and she was like born again, and everybody had to be born again and whatever. So when she was at this moment where she was passing away and she was showing so much fear, I was like, Mom, you lived your whole life telling us you know where you're going, you know you're confident. She said, yeah, well, wait till it's you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really you know, an experience of like, oh, that's what's, you know, like it's one thing to say it and on many levels believe it. But when you go to actually experience it yourself, it's a whole different,
totally different thing. Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that. Yes, Shayla. Yeah, it really is about the process, right? And that's what happens in this entire experience, right? The P's, ultimately the 7 P's, really is about the process. It's about the entire structure of it, the architecture of it. And it does include you thinking about the greatest thing that you're fearful of. Sometimes for leaders, it's having everybody abandon them and walk away. Or it's being told that you're going to lose your credentialing, or it's being told that you're going to lose your freedom in somehow. And for some of us, it's about the thought of losing a loved one, right? The fear of that. And once we can work through to the other side of what that actually means, it does create some freedom for us. I think, you know, that's one of the reasons why, you know, in the word, when God talks about what the worst thing that they could do is take your life. And you realize that that's actually the best thing that could happen, because I end up then in heaven, right? I end up with my God. So even at your worst, if you decide that you will take my life, it will still be for my good, right? I think when you can get to a place where you can wrap your mind around that, right? The loss of someone that you love so dearly, that you will not die if they die. You will not be lost if they're gone. You will not find total, you know, just total annihilation. Just your whole life will come to an end. I think you're right that can create for you some level of freedom. Yeah. So, any other thoughts? Okay. So let me give you my final thoughts, and then we will wrap up our session, because I actually want to give you guys about 15 minutes or so for you to just go stretch before you have to go back into the large group setting, because we've been sitting for almost an hour and a half, and that's just a long time to be sitting. So as leaders, I want to remind you that leadership includes a goal, not influence with no intended outcome. I want to encourage each of you to internalize the 5 Ps. And with Blaine's help, I gave you the last 2 Ps, to live them, to allow them to be the points you reflect on every day, to make sure that you're still on the path to accomplishing your goals as leaders, despite whatever you may be feeling or thinking, or what may be happening around you that feels completely out of your control. Let me remind you that you are capable. You made it this far in life, so there you go. You have a 100% batting average of overcoming challenges because you've made it this far. So there you go. You have figured out how to stand tall when others have wanted you to stay knocked down. So there you go. You have fought for the life you wanted and believed you could have despite the family and community stories you come from. So there you go. You have figured out how to turn a little bit into a lot to survive yet another day. So there you go. You have made up your mind to accept the call to stand in your spiritual gifts to support the building of the kingdom of God. Trust that He will guide, bless, and assist you with your efforts. And when it seems like you are stuck and you can't move your ministry members or can't make inroads in achieving your goals, or that those around you seem to not be standing in their own leadership or are abandoning you, the work of the ministry and or the church, you have the practical tools of the 5 Ps to remind you that all you are doing and why you're doing this is for the work unto the Lord. So remember, define your purpose, be clear and flexible with your plans to achieve your purpose. Get your mindset together, what perspective, fixed or growth, you will have to encounter the stuff of life. Determine in your mind, body, and spirit now that you will persist no matter what life throws at you. Each day will bring its own opportunities and tasks. So how will you find peace to deal with the business of the day? Do this mental check every day, and you will realize that you have so many more successfully completed days you've deposited into the kingdom building bank that you can rely on to get you closer and closer to goal completion. So I want to ask each of you to give me one word as it relates to the 5 Ps that you could use to summarize for yourself. So Shayla said process. That was what she took out of it. Maybe she might change her word. But what's one thing you're feeling from this conversation that you would say you are feeling about the 5 Ps? For me, it's hope. It gives me hope.
I say empowered for myself.
Okay, empowered.
Possibility.
Possibility, yes. Debbie says enlightenment. Yes.
I think for me, it's an Esther moment, because all of a sudden the purpose becomes apparent.
Yeah, Esther moments, yes. Clarity, I got you, Tim, clarity. Who else?
For me, it's perseverance.
Perseverance.
The ability to adapt to change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Brad says vision. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a mindset.
Mindset. Mm-hmm.
Path forward.
Path forward. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Flexibility. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who else hasn't shared?
I was going to say perseverance also.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in alignment with Tim.
Mm-hmm.
I heard everything I was thinking, and I think that's remarkable that we are truly,
Yeah.
we've come together on one wavelength.
Yep.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. I'm happy to facilitate that conversation. Yeah.
I agree with Judy.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I would like to, as I said earlier, I would like to give you guys back some time so that you can be able to just stretch and think about process, another P, some of what we talked about today. And power, yes, power, Jennifer, yeah. So that you can, walk into your next session, but you don't feel like you're just going from session to session without an opportunity to just think. I hate when conferences do that to you, right? It's just overload with no opportunity to think. So I would like to have someone to offer a prayer to close us out. I can pray. Yep, Blaine.
Could I ask a question first?
Sure.
Taking a minute here. Other than the Bible and probably your doctoral dissertation, of course, maybe not in that order, what would you say are your top 2 or 3 favorite leadership resources, books, authors, blog, or whatever that really you draw upon or you look to?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'm a weird bird because I have like a lot of different professional backgrounds. So like I'm a social worker, an education leader, and then I do organizational development work. So I kind of take from a lot of areas. So it depends on the thing that I'm working on, but I really like, I don't know if any of you have ever heard Peter Senge before, heard of Peter Senge in education and systems thinking. His work is dense as all get out. I mean, good Lord, it's dense, but it's good in terms of helping you think through systems thinking, right? And I think a lot of times we don't realize how interconnected and simultaneously independent we are. Particularly in this country, we are raised and groomed to think of ourselves as very independent beings, right? That what I do is a reflection on me. And this has always been a conflict for me because I was raised in a culture that is communal, that is entirely interdependent. And so I think Peter has a great way of showing that we live in these worlds at the same time of interdependence and independence. And if we don't create a synergy with them, we have challenges, right? When I think about like personal development, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I actually like to read like Toni Morrison. I know you're going to say, wait, how is she like, someone who's providing any kind of leadership counseling, but a lot of her work causes you to really think about the positions that you're taking and why you're taking them. So I like to read Toni Morrison's work. I also like Bell Hooks because she will challenge you to think about the systems that you are living in. In terms of people who are in the field, I think a lot of times, like if you want to go to websites like Psychology Today, they have a lot of, great contributors who you could then follow, see what they're talking about in their world, around just the counseling world. And a lot of what I like to use in my work is around positive psychology. It's not the happy-go-lucky, that many have portrayed it to be, but it really is about mindset. I do believe in when the word says, if you focus on a problem and you just spend your time focusing on what that problem is bringing you, you miss all of the other opportunities that problem is also bringing you. So I like to be more of the positive psychology mindset, and Psychology Today will do a lot of that work. Does that answer your question, Blaine?
Thank you.
Sure. So, okay. So is there someone who would be willing to pray us out today? I'm not going to put the pastors on the spot because I know y'all have a responsibility to always pray us out, but I'm happy to do it. Okay, Judy. Thank you.
Will you pray with me?
Absolutely.
Good and gracious God, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for Kim. We thank you for her mindset, for her persistence, her faith in you, and how indeed she has actualized her faith and is resourcing us with her energy, your energy through her. Bless us now as we take a little break and go to our next sessions. We thank you for this technology. We thank you for all of our adaptiveness in accepting where we are. And gracious God, we ask for your peace. Great blessings on Kim, we ask. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for that, Judy. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your session, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.